The Sunday brunch at Belmore Country Club was everything my father loved. Expensive, prestigious, and full of people who needed to know how successful the Parker family had become. 70 guests filled the private dining room, celebrating his 65th birthday with champagne and congratulations. I sat at the family table, picking at my eggs Benedict while my brother Nathan held court. He'd just been promoted to senior project manager at Tech Innovations, and he wanted everyone to know about it. The promotion came with a 30% raise, Nathan announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Plus stock options. The company is really investing in my future. My mother beamed at him. We're so proud, Nathan. Director of Strategic Projects at only 32 years old. Senior Project Manager, Nathan corrected with false modesty. Director is the next level up. But I'm on track for it. My sister Claire raised her mimosa in a toast. To Nathan, the family success story. Everyone drank. I sipped my orange juice. No champagne for me. I had 3 board meetings scheduled for tomorrow and needed a clear head. And what about you, Emma? My Aunt Linda turned her attention to me with that particular smile reserved for family disappointments. How's the freelancing going? It's going well, I said neutrally. Nathan laughed, not kindly. Come on, Emma. Freelancing is just code for unemployed. You can admit you're struggling. I'm not struggling, I said calmly. Really? Because you're still living in that tiny apartment downtown, driving that ancient Subaru, wearing clothes from 5 years ago. He gestured at my simple dress. Meanwhile, I just bought a house in Riverside Estates. 4 bedrooms, pool, 3-car garage. My father set down his coffee cup with approval. Nathan's building equity. Making smart financial decisions. That's what success looks like. I said nothing, which apparently was permission for the conversation to continue without me. Claire leaned forward, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Emma, Nathan and I have been talking. We want to help you. My husband's company is hiring administrative assistants. It's entry-level, but it's a real job with real benefits. I appreciate the thought, but I'm fine. You're 30 years old, my mother said gently. Don't you think it's time to pursue something more stable? This freelance consulting thing. What exactly do you even do? I advise companies on technology integration and digital transformation. Nathan snorted. That's a fancy way of saying you help people set up their computers. It's more complex than that, I said, keeping my voice even. Is it though? He leaned back in his chair, the picture of smug satisfaction. Because I work in actual tech, Emma. I know what real technology work looks like. And whatever you're doing in that apartment on your laptop. That's not it. My father nodded in agreement. Nathan works for one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the region. He understands the industry. If he says you're not doing real work, you should listen. I took another sip of orange juice, letting their words wash over me. I'd heard variations of this speech at every family gathering for the past 6 years. Ever since I'd turned down the corporate job my father had arranged for me and started my own consulting firm. At least I have a real job, unlike you, Nathan continued, warming to his theme. I have a title, a salary, benefits, colleagues who respect me. What do you have? A laptop and some clients who probably don't even pay you properly. The table murmured in agreement. My cousin David, who worked in insurance, chimed in. The freelance economy is a trap, Emma. No job security, no retirement plan, no health insurance. You're one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. I have health insurance, I said quietly. Obamacare doesn't count, Nathan said dismissively. I'm talking about real corporate health insurance. The kind that comes with a real job. My mother reached over and patted my hand. We're just worried about you, sweetheart. You're so smart, so capable. We hate seeing you waste your potential on this freelance dream that's clearly not working out. It's working out fine, I insisted. Then why are you still in that studio apartment? Claire challenged. Why are you driving a 12-year-old car? Why don't you ever talk about your work or your clients? I value privacy. Nathan laughed again. Privacy. Right. That's what people say when they're embarrassed about what they're doing. I was about to respond when I noticed someone approaching our table. A man in an expensive gray suit, walking with purpose directly toward us. I recognized him immediately. Richard Chin, my corporate lawyer and the man handling the Tech Innovations acquisition. My stomach tightened. The merger wasn't supposed to close until tomorrow. We'd agreed on Monday to avoid any weekend complications. What was Richard doing here? He reached our table and stopped directly beside me. Miss Parker, I apologize for interrupting your family celebration. But I needed to speak with you immediately. The table fell silent. Everyone stared at Richard, then at me. Who's this? My father asked, suspicious of anyone addressing me with such deference. Richard extended his hand to my father. Richard Chin, corporate attorney with Morrison & Associates. I represent Ms. Parker's business interests. Business interests? Nathan repeated, confused. Richard turned to me, ignoring everyone else. Ms. Parker, we finalized the merger this morning. The Tech Innovations Board accepted your acquisition offer. As of 9:47 a.m., Parker Ventures now owns 73% of Tech Innovations' total equity. The color drained from Nathan's face. What? I took a deep breath, abandoning the anonymity I'd carefully maintained. Thank you, Richard. I wasn't expecting the closing until tomorrow. The board wanted to move quickly. All parties signed off early this morning. He pulled out a tablet showing me the signed documents. Congratulations on the acquisition. Tech Innovations is now officially part of the Parker Ventures portfolio. Nathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. That's impossible. You can't own Tech Innovations. You're a freelance consultant. Actually, Richard said coolly, Ms. Parker is the founder and CEO of Parker Ventures, a private equity and venture capital firm specializing in technology sector acquisitions. She's been operating for 8 years and currently manages assets worth approximately $4.8 billion. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. 4.8 billion? Give or take, I confirmed quietly. It fluctuates with market conditions. Nathan was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You can't be serious. This is some kind of joke. I assure you, Mr. Parker, this is not a joke. Richard's tone was professional but carried a hint of satisfaction. Your employer, or rather your former employer in its independent state, is now a subsidiary of your sister's company. The acquisition was valued at $647 million. My father had gone completely still. Emma, what is he talking about? Parker Ventures, I explained, accepting that the secret was finally out. I founded it 8 years ago when I turned down that corporate job you arranged. I started with angel investing, putting small amounts of money into promising startups. I was good at identifying which companies would succeed. Very good. I gestured to Richard. My first investment returned 400%. My second returned 600%. I reinvested the profits, built a portfolio, and eventually transitioned to larger acquisitions. Parker Ventures now owns stakes in 37 companies across the technology, healthcare, and renewable energy sectors. Claire's voice came out as a whisper. 37 companies? Our portfolio is diverse. Some are majority stakes like Tech Innovations. Others are minority investments where we provide capital and strategic guidance. I looked at Nathan, whose face had progressed from pale to gray. Tech Innovations caught my attention 18 months ago. Good technology, strong market position, but struggling with cash flow and strategic direction. Classic acquisition target. Nathan found his voice. You bought my company? I bought 73% of your company, I corrected. The founders retained 17% and employees collectively hold 10% through their stock options. Including you. But I never heard anything about this. No announcements, no meetings. The acquisition was confidential until closing. That's standard practice in private equity. I turned to Richard. The transition plan we discussed. When does implementation begin? Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. I've scheduled meetings with all department heads and key personnel. Richard glanced at Nathan. That includes you, Mr. Parker. As senior project manager, you'll be briefed on the new operational structure and reporting relationships. Reporting relationships? Nathan repeated faintly. Yes. Tech Innovations will maintain operational independence, but major strategic decisions now require approval from Parker Ventures' executive team. Richard consulted his tablet. Ms. Parker has appointed Jennifer Zhao as the transition CEO. She'll be on site starting Monday to oversee integration. My sister found her voice. Emma, I don't understand. How did you build a multi-billion-dollar company without us knowing? You weren't paying attention, I said simply. Every time I tried to talk about my work, someone dismissed it as freelancing or changed the subject. Eventually, I stopped trying to explain. My mother looked stricken. But you live so modestly. The apartment, the car. The studio apartment is my office. I own the building, all 42 units. I live in the penthouse at Meridian Towers. The Subaru is reliable and efficient. I also own a Tesla and a BMW, but I don't need to drive them to prove anything. My Aunt Linda had recovered enough to ask questions. Meridian Towers? Those penthouses cost millions. Mine was $8.4 million. I bought it 3 years ago. I turned back to Nathan, who looked like he might be sick. I've been watching tech innovations for over a year. Reading quarterly reports, analyzing market position, evaluating leadership. The company has potential, but it needs better strategic direction. And you think you can provide that? Nathan's voice had a desperate edge. You've never even worked in tech. I've invested in 47 technology companies over the past 8 years. 23 became profitable. 12 went public. 3 were acquired by major corporations at significant returns. I kept my tone matter-of-fact, not boastful. I understand tech companies better than you think. Richard checked his watch. Miss Parker, I hate to rush, but you have a call with the Singapore investors in 30 minutes. Right, thank you. I stood, gathering my purse. I should go. I have work to do. Wait, my father said urgently. You can't just drop this information and leave. We need to talk. About what? About how I'm wasting my potential. About how I need a real job. I looked around the table at their shocked faces. I've been listening to those speeches for 8 years. I'm done listening. Emma, please. My mother's eyes were wet. We didn't know. You could have asked, I said quietly. Any time in the past 8 years, you could have asked what I was actually doing instead of assuming I was failing. Nathan suddenly lurched forward. You can't own my company. Oh, I'll fight this. I'll talk to the founders, the board. The founders are the ones who sold to me, I interrupted. David and Michael were thrilled with the offer. They're both staying on as advisors, but they wanted out of day-to-day operations. The board unanimously approved the acquisition. There's nothing to fight. But why? He demanded. Why would you buy my company? Because it's a good investment. Because tech innovations has strong fundamentals but needs capital and better management. Because I saw an opportunity. I paused. It wasn't personal, Nathan. It was business. Not personal. His voice rose. You just bought the company I work for. You're now effectively my boss. How is that not personal? You're not reporting to me directly, I clarified. You report to your department head, who reports to Jennifer Zhao, who reports to my COO, who reports to me. There are several layers of separation. Richard cleared his throat gently. We really should go, Miss Parker. I nodded and turned to leave, but my father stood, blocking my path. This is unacceptable. You ambushed us. You let us believe you were struggling while you were secretly building an empire. I didn't ambush anyone. I built a company. You all assumed it wasn't significant because it didn't look like your idea of success. I met his eyes steadily. That's not my fault. We're your family, he protested. You should have told us. Why? So you could offer more unsolicited advice? Tell me I was doing it wrong? Suggest I get a real job instead. I shook my head. I learned early that your approval was tied to fitting into a very specific box. I didn't fit, so I stopped trying. My mother was crying now. We would have supported you if we'd known. Would you? Or would you have told me I was being reckless, overambitious, setting myself up for failure? I asked. Because that's what you said when I started angel investing. You called it playing with money, and suggested I get serious about my future. She had no answer for that. I gently moved past my father and started toward the door. Richard followed, his expression carefully neutral. Emma. Claire called after me. What happens now? With the family. I paused at the doorway, looking back at the table full of shocked, confused faces. That's up to you. You know the truth now. We'll see what you do with it. In the parking lot, Richard let out a long breath. That was dramatic. That wasn't supposed to happen, I said, pulling out my phone to check messages. The merger was scheduled for tomorrow specifically to avoid family complications. The board wanted to move quickly. They were worried about the Frankfurt Group counteroffer. He opened my car door. Not the Subaru but the silver Tesla I'd driven today because I had investor calls scheduled. Are you okay? I'm fine. Relieved actually. I'm tired of pretending to be less successful than I am just to make family dinners comfortable. Your brother looked like he was going to pass out. Nathan's been telling me how to live my life since we were teenagers. He thought he was the successful one, the family golden child. I slid into the driver's seat. Today he learned otherwise. What will you do about him? About his position at Tech Innovations. I thought about that. Nothing immediately. His performance reviews are solid. He's good at his job even if he's arrogant about it. As long as his work meets standards, his employment is secure. Even after everything he said today? Even then. I don't fire people for family drama. I fire them for poor performance. I started the car. Besides, the best revenge is showing him I'm a fair and competent owner. That will bother him more than anything else. Richard smiled. You're terrifying in the best way. I drove to my actual office. Not the studio apartment my family thought was my workspace, but the Parker Ventures headquarters in the financial district. The building was quiet on Sunday, just weekend security and a few workaholics catching up on projects. My assistant, Sarah, had left notes about the Singapore call. I settled into my office chair looking out at the city skyline and made the call. 40 million invested in renewable energy. Another success to add to the portfolio. Between calls I scrolled through my phone. 17 missed calls from my mother. 8 texts from Claire. Nathan had sent 23 messages starting with, "What the hell?" and progressing through various stages of denial, anger, and eventually reaching something that might have been acceptance. I ignored most of them. My father sent just one text, "We need to talk. Please." Around 3 p.m. my office phone rang. Sarah had given my mother the direct number. A boundary violation I'd deal with later. "Emma, please don't hang up," my mother said immediately. "I'm not going to hang up. Your father is beside himself." Nathan locked himself in his old bedroom. Claire won't stop crying. The whole family is in chaos. "That's not my responsibility," I said calmly. "I built a company. I made a good investment. The fact that Nathan happens to work there is coincidental." "Is it though? You had to know he worked at Tech Innovations." "Of course I knew. I research everything before I invest. But Mom, I didn't buy the company to embarrass Nathan. I bought it because it's a solid acquisition with good growth potential. Nathan's employment, there was a factor I considered. Would our relationship complicate management? But it wasn't the deciding factor." "He thinks you did this to humiliate him." "Nathan thinks everything is about him," I said. "This is about a $647 million investment in a growing tech company. His ego isn't worth that much consideration." My mother was quiet for a moment. "When did you become so cold?" "I'm not cold. I'm professional. There's a difference." I softened my tone slightly. "Mom, I've spent 8 years building this company while you all dismissed it as freelancing. I've closed deals worth hundreds of millions while you worried about me not having health insurance. Today you finally learned the truth. That doesn't make me cold, it makes me competent." "We didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't ask," I countered. "Every family gathering I was there. Available. If anyone had ever asked me seriously about my work, about my company, about what I was building, I would have told you. But no one asked. You all assumed you knew. What do we do now? That's up to you. I'm going to keep running my company, making investments, growing my portfolio. You can either accept who I actually am or you can keep clinging to the version of me you invented. Your choice." After we hung up, I turned back to my work. London investors needed updates on the healthcare portfolio. The renewable energy deal needed final review. Regular business continued regardless of family drama. The Singapore call went well. They were investing 40 million in one of my renewable energy portfolio companies. After that, I had calls with London, then New York, then back to dealing with the Tech Innovations acquisition details that would dominate my week. By the time I got home to my Meridian Towers penthouse, it was after 6 p.m. I kicked off my shoes, poured myself a glass of wine, and stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows watching the sunset paint the city in orange and gold. My phone buzzed constantly. Nathan had transitioned from denial to desperation. We need to talk. Please. I'm sorry. Just call me back. Claire sent a long text. I don't understand any of this. How did you become this person? Why didn't you tell us? Are you angry with us? Please explain. Even my Aunt Linda texted. Your mother tells me you're a billionaire? I always knew you were smart, dear. We should have lunch sometime. I responded to none of them. I needed space to process, to think, to figure out what came next. Around 8 p.m. there was a knock at my door. My building had doormen and security. No one should be able to reach my floor without clearance. I checked the video monitor and saw Nathan standing there, looking disheveled and desperate. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. How did you get up here? I told security I was your brother. That it was an emergency. He looked past me into the penthouse, his eyes widening. Jesus, Emma. This place is incredible. What do you want, Nathan? To talk. To understand. He ran his hand through his hair. To apologize properly. Can I come in? I stepped aside, letting him enter. He walked slowly through my living space, taking in the original artwork, the designer furniture, the view that stretched across the entire city. This is worth millions, he said softly. 8.4 million, I confirmed. I bought it 3 years ago. While I was telling you to get a real job. While you were telling me to get a real job, I agreed. He turned to face me and I saw genuine anguish in his expression. I've been a complete ass. For years. I thought I was successful, thought I had it figured out, and I treated you like you were the family project. The one we all needed to fix. Yes, I said simply. You did. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell any of us? I gestured for him to sit, then settled into the chair across from him. Do you remember 4 years ago, Thanksgiving? I mentioned I was evaluating an acquisition target. You laughed and asked if I was buying a lemonade stand. He closed his eyes. I remember. Or Dad's 60th birthday. I said I'd invested in a healthcare startup. Dad called it gambling and told me to get serious about my future. I remember that too. Every time I tried to share my work, someone dismissed it. Made a joke. Offered unsolicited advice about what I should be doing instead. After a while, it was easier to just stop talking about it. Nathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm trying to understand how this happened. How you went from recent college graduate to billionaire without anyone noticing. People notice what they're looking for, I said. You were all looking for failure, for someone to rescue, for proof that your traditional path was the right one. You weren't looking for a woman quietly building an empire from her laptop. Tell me how it happened, he said. Really. I want to understand. So I did. I walked him through the early days. The angel investments made with money I'd saved from a college internship. The first startup that returned 400%. The second that returned 600%. The slow, methodical building of a portfolio. I lived in that studio apartment not because I couldn't afford better, but because I was pouring every dollar into investments. I drove the Subaru because it was reliable and I didn't care about impressing anyone. I skipped fancy clothes and expensive dinners because I was building something bigger. While we all thought you were struggling. While you all assumed I was struggling, I corrected. There's a difference. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? At Tech Innovations. You keep doing your job. Jennifer Zhao, she's brilliant, by the way, one of the best operational CEOs I've worked with, will implement the transition plan. The company gets capital, strategic direction, and stability. Employees keep their jobs. Everyone wins. Except me, who has to work knowing my little sister owns the company. That's an ego problem, not an actual problem, I said bluntly. Nathan, your work is solid. Your performance reviews are consistently above average. You're good at your job. Nothing about that changes just because I own the company now. It changes everything, he protested. Only if you let it. I met his eyes. I bought Tech Innovations because it's a smart investment. Not to control you, not to embarrass you, not to prove anything. Business isn't personal. The sooner you understand that, the easier this will be. How are you so calm about all this? Because I've known this was coming for 18 months. I've had time to prepare, to think through all the scenarios, to plan the transition. I poured myself more wine. You found out 3 hours ago. I've had much longer to process. He nodded slowly. Will you fire me eventually? Once the transition is complete. Why would I? You're good at your job. Because of today. Because of all the things I've said over the years. Nathan, I don't make business decisions based on personal grievances. If I did, I'd be terrible at my job. I lean back in my chair. Your employment at Tech Innovations is based on your performance, your skills, your contributions. Not on our family dynamics. That's very generous. It's not generous. It's professional. I softened slightly. Look, we're gonna have to figure out how to navigate this. You're my brother and you're an employee of a company I own. Those are distinct relationships that require distinct boundaries. I don't even know where to start. Start by accepting reality. I'm not the struggling freelancer you thought I was. I'm a successful CEO with significant assets and business experience. You're a talented project manager working for a company in my portfolio. Those are the facts. It's going to take me a while to adjust to this new reality, he admitted. Take your time. Just don't let it affect your work performance. After Nathan left, I stood at my windows again, watching the city lights emerge as darkness fell. My phone continued buzzing. Claire, my parents, various relatives who'd heard the news. I ignored them all. Tomorrow I'd deal with family. Tomorrow I'd navigate the complicated dynamics of being Nathan's employer. Tomorrow I'd manage the Tech Innovations transition and all the work that came with it. Tonight I just wanted to breathe. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon. Texts from Nathan, alternating between angry and desperate. Calls from my mother, my sister, various relatives who'd heard the news. I ignored most of them. I needed space to think. Finally, around 8 p.m. I answered my mother's call. Emma, thank God. I've been calling for hours. I know. I was working. Your father wants to have dinner. Just family. He wants to talk. About what? About everything. About your company, your success, the things we said today. Her voice cracked. Emma, we were so wrong about you. So completely wrong. Yes, I agreed. You were. Can we fix this? Can we make this right? I thought about her question. I don't know, Mom. You've spent 8 years making me feel inadequate for choices that were actually building something remarkable. That's not something that gets fixed with one apology. I know. But we want to try. Please, Emma. Give us a chance. Against my better judgment, I agreed to dinner. Tuesday night, after the Tech Innovations transition meetings were complete. The next 2 days were chaos. Jennifer Zhao arrived Monday morning and immediately began implementing the transition plan. Department heads were briefed. Employees were assured their jobs were secure. New strategic initiatives were announced. Nathan attended the meetings with a shell-shocked expression. I watched him from the back of the conference room during the all-hands announcement, seeing him process the reality that his younger sister, the one he'd mocked for years, was now the majority owner of his company. Tuesday morning he showed up at my corporate office unannounced. My assistant tried to turn him away, but I heard the commotion and intervened. It's fine, Sarah. Send him in. Nathan entered my office. The real office, not the studio apartment he thought was my only workspace. He stared at the original artwork, the custom furniture, the view of downtown through panoramic windows. This is where you work? He said faintly. This is my office. Parker Ventures occupies floors 8 through 11. This building? I own 35% equity. He sank into the chair across from my desk. I don't understand. How did this happen? How did you go from freelancing to this? I told you. I started with angel investing. Built a portfolio. Scaled up. I leaned back in my chair. Nathan, I tried to talk about my work at family events. Remember Thanksgiving 4 years ago? I mentioned I was evaluating an acquisition target. You laughed and asked if I was buying a lemonade stand. He flinched at the memory. Or Dad's birthday 3 years ago. I said I'd invested in a healthcare startup. Dad said I was gambling my future. Told me to get serious. I kept my voice level, not angry, just factual. Eventually, I stopped mentioning my work because every comment was met with dismissal or condescension. We thought we were helping, he said weakly. Encouraging you to be more practical. You thought you were helping yourselves feel superior, I corrected. Having a family member who didn't follow the traditional path was uncomfortable. It was easier to decide I was failing than to accept I was succeeding differently. He was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? At Tech Innovations. You keep doing your job. Jennifer implements the transition plan. The company gets better strategic direction and sufficient capital to execute growth initiatives. I pulled up his file on my computer. Your performance reviews are strong. Your projects deliver results. As far as I'm concerned, you're a valued employee. Even after everything? Even after everything. I don't make business decisions based on personal feelings. If I did, I wouldn't be very good at my job. Are you going to fire me eventually? He asked quietly. Once the transition is complete? Why would I? You're good at your job. I met his eyes. Nathan, I bought Tech Innovations because it's a solid company with growth potential. Not to punish you or control you. You happen to work there. That was coincidental, not intentional. It doesn't feel coincidental. I understand that. But it's the truth. I closed his file. Look, I'm not going to pretend today didn't happen. Or that the past 8 years of you dismissing my work didn't hurt. But I'm also not going to let family drama interfere with business operations. You're an employee of a company I own. That's the extent of our professional relationship. He nodded slowly, processing. And personally, we're still siblings. If you want to rebuild that relationship, I'm open to it. But it has to be based on mutual respect, not you treating me like a failure you need to save. I never thought you were a failure, he protested. You literally said I didn't have a real job. Multiple times. Including Sunday. He looked down at his hands. I was wrong. About everything. Emma, I'm sorry. I believe you're sorry you were wrong, I said carefully. I'm not sure yet if you're sorry for how you treated me. I am. Truly. I was arrogant and dismissive and cruel. He looked up and I was surprised to see genuine remorse in his eyes. You're my sister. I should have supported you, believed in you. Instead, I made you feel small because it made me feel big. Yes, I agreed. You did. Can we fix this? Maybe. But Nathan, it's going to take time and consistent effort. Not just apologizing, but actually changing how you talk to me, think about me, treat me. I understand, he said quietly. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time thinking about family and success and the weird intersection of the two. I'd built something extraordinary, but the people who should have celebrated with me had spent years telling me I was wasting my time. Tuesday evening, I met my parents at a quiet restaurant downtown. Not the country club, not anywhere public. Just a small Italian place where we could talk without an audience. My father looked older than he had on Sunday. My mother's eyes were red from crying. Thank you for coming, Dad said as I sat down. You're welcome. We ordered. Made small talk about food. Avoided the topic we all knew we were there to discuss. Finally, over the main course, my father set down his fork. I owe you an apology, Emma. A real one, not the inadequate words from Sunday. I listened, saying nothing. I spent your entire adult life telling you what success should look like. Corporate job, traditional career path, visible markers of achievement. When you chose differently, I decided you were making a mistake. He paused, struggling with the words. I was so convinced I knew better that I never stopped to see what you were actually building. Why? I asked. Why was it so hard to trust that I knew what I was doing? Because it looked different than what I understood, he admitted. I built my career in traditional business. Worked my way up through corporations, got promotions, collected titles. That was success to me. When you turned down the corporate job I arranged, when you started freelancing, he made air quotes, it looked like rejection of everything I valued. It wasn't rejection of your values, I said. It was choosing my own path. I see that now. Too late, but I see it. He reached across the table, stopping short of touching my hand. Emma, I'm proud of you. Profoundly proud. I should have said that 8 years ago, but I'm saying it now. Why didn't you ask? I said the question I'd been holding for years. At any point, why didn't you just ask me what I was actually doing? What my business was? How it worked? My mother answered, tears streaming down her face. Because we were afraid. Afraid you'd say it wasn't working. Afraid we'd have to watch you fail. It felt safer to criticize and push you toward something traditional than to support something we didn't understand. So you made me feel like a failure because you were afraid I might fail? Yes, she whispered. And that was unforgivable. We sat in silence, the weight of 8 years of misunderstanding heavy between us. I don't know if we can fix this, I said finally. Not quickly. Maybe not ever completely. But I'm willing to try if you are. We want to try, my father said immediately. Whatever it takes. Then here's what I need. No more unsolicited advice. No more comparisons to Nathan or Claire. No more assumptions about my life based on surface appearances. If you want to know something, ask. If I don't want to share, respect that boundary. They both nodded. And I need you to understand, I'm not going to change my life to make you more comfortable. I live modestly by choice, not because I can't afford better. I drive a practical car because it makes sense, not because I'm poor. I value privacy about my work because I don't need external validation. We understand, my mother said. Do you? Because on Sunday before Richard showed up, you were all planning my intervention. Trying to save me from a life you thought was failing. That can't happen anymore. My father nodded slowly. You're right. We'll do better. We'll be better. The dinner continued, awkward but hopeful. We talked about my company, they asked questions and actually listened to the answers. They told me about their lives, their work, without the undercurrent of pity I'd always sensed before. It wasn't perfect. Years of damage don't heal in one conversation. But it was a start. When I got home that night, I found texts from both Claire and Nathan. Claire wanted to have lunch to talk about everything. Nathan sent a simple message. Thank you for not firing me. I'll work hard to earn your respect. As a sister and as an employer. I texted Claire back. Lunch next week. Let me know what day works. To Nathan I replied, you already have my respect as an employee. The sister relationship. We'll work on that. I stood at my penthouse windows again, looking out at the city I'd conquered quietly while my family thought I was failing. The view never got old. Millions of lights, thousands of buildings, hundreds of businesses. Some of them were mine. Some were companies I'd invested in. Some were competitors I was watching, evaluating, considering. $4.8 billion. 37 companies in my portfolio. 8 years of building something extraordinary while being told I was wasting my time. The revelation at Dad's birthday hadn't been planned. But maybe it was necessary. Maybe I'd outgrown the anonymity that had protected me. Maybe it was time for my family to see me clearly, completely, without the buffer of their assumptions. My phone buzzed. Jennifer Zhao. Tech Innovations transition going smoothly. Employees are responding well to new direction. Your brother is being professional and cooperative. This acquisition is going to work. I smiled and typed back, good work. Keep me updated. Another message came through, this one from Richard. Forbes wants to interview you about the Tech Innovations acquisition. They're calling you the phantom investor, who's been quietly building a tech empire. Interested? I considered it. For 8 years I'd operated in the shadows, building wealth without publicity. But maybe that time was over. Maybe it was time to step into the light. Set it up, I replied. But on my terms. I control the narrative. Understood. I'll handle it. I set down my phone and poured another glass of wine. Tomorrow I had 3 more board meetings, 2 investor calls, and a site visit to one of my renewable energy companies. The work never stopped. The opportunities never ended. But tonight I had a moment to breathe. To appreciate what I'd built. To acknowledge how far I'd come from that day 8 years ago when I turned down my father's corporate job and decided to forge my own path. I'd been called a freelancer, a dreamer, a woman wasting her potential. I was Emma Parker. I owned companies. I shaped industries. I built empires. And I did it all while my family wasn't looking. The best part? I was just getting started.